So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September edition of the Ohio Workforce Coalition's monthly webinar. Today, we will be hearing from Donna Albanese, the State Director of Aspire in Ohio. Before we get started, I want to just kick off with a couple housekeeping items. We are recording this session to post on our website. You may leave your cameras on or off. If you do turn them on, please remember that we can actually see you. And do keep your phones on mute. Everyone should have arrived muted, but every month someone comes off mute and we get some background noise. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat box, and if you would ask or enter questions there as well. I will monitor the questions and either jump in and handle them along the way, or we will hold them to the end. So this month is actually Workforce Development Month, and this week is National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. If you are on social media, you can find lots of neat stuff at hashtag AEFL Week 2021. And to acknowledge that and celebrate it, we've invited Donna Albanese to join us today. I'm going to turn it over to Lori Atkins to introduce her. Lori is Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at the Literacy Cooperative and a member of the executive group of the Ohio Workforce Coalition's Leadership Committee. Lori.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored to be able to introduce our speaker today. Donna Albanese is the State Director for Aspire, the Ohio Adult Workforce Readiness Education Program at the Ohio Department of Higher Education. She's worked in the field of adult education as a teacher, an administrator, and a state consultant, including her work with higher education for the past 18 years. Donna holds a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a master's degree in adult education and workforce development from the Ohio State University. It's my pleasure to welcome Donna.
Thanks, Laureen, and thanks, Rebecca, for having me, and to all the participants who are interested. Appreciate you being on. Feel free to pop in questions at any time. So can I get a quick show of hands, though, if you've heard of Aspire? Used to be ABLE, and then about 5 years ago, we did a rebranding, same mission, but do you mind just doing a show of hands to let me know if you're a little bit familiar with the Aspire Workforce Program? Awesome. Good. All right, well, give a little bit of background information for those, anybody that might be new to the former ABLE, now called the Aspire program. We are a required partner, core partner in WIOA. We are Title II. So the AEFLA that Rebecca was mentioning, AFLA Week, is the actual name of our legislation, Adult Education and Family Literacy Act. So I'm going to let you, just to familiarize yourself with our legislation, I'm going to just have you read this to yourself, and then it'll help you understand the services as we talk about what Aspire can offer. So our main job is to get individuals, right, that don't have a post-secondary level of education, to at least get them through their secondary level of education and then into some advanced training or employment. We're often known as the GED program, the ESL program, but I'm hoping by the time we're done, you'll get to know a little bit more about what we can offer in your community. I'm sure those of you in workforce development are aware of this need, but this is our target population here. the $650,000, the 650,000 working age adults that don't have a high school diploma. And certainly the ESL population and those needing remediation for college and employment. This is pretty typical. I mean, year after year, COVID, pre-COVID, we always have, you know, more females than males typically. Students range from 16 to, I think, 96. That's the beauty of adult ed. You know, we have such a wide range. Now, 16, 17, and 18-year-olds must be officially withdrawn from compulsory education before they can attend an adult Aspire program. And then 70% do lack a high school diploma when they enroll. That's what most people's goal is. The people that do have diplomas are usually our English language learners that have a credential from their home country. So while most of our students do have a goal of getting their, it's now called a high school equivalency. I know we often just use GED, but I'll explain that in a minute why we don't call it just the GED program, but a high school equivalency that, you know, this is their goal, but only 11% actually come into the program having secondary level, you know, reading, math, and language skills. So it usually takes a lot of persistence and remediation to get these adults up to secondary level to even prepare for the high school equivalency test. I'll give you a minute to read through this slide because hopefully you know a lot of you knew that we did the basic literacy, high school HSE prep, but you might not have known about the other services that we provide there. And those are the ones I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about. These bridge programs, these are more advanced programs, like we have advanced English classes that are a college prep class to help individuals that are English language learners to help them bypass, for example, the developmental courses. So we have those advanced courses. We have acuplacer prep classes. So those would be what we call our bridge classes. And then I really want to talk more, and I will be showing you examples and pictures of our integrated education and occupational training programs. These are new under WIOA. We call them IETs, Integrated Education and Training for short, but we'll go into a little bit more detail on that in just a minute here. The reason I put this slide in is because I just think it's important for the general public, and especially, you know, you professionals that work with the public all the time, just to know about the different diploma pathways for adults. Now, these are all administered through the Ohio Department of Education, the K-12 system. Aspire is under the Department of Higher Education. So, of course, you know, we have two separate state agencies, but we do work well together. Aspire helps prepare individuals for these other diploma pathways, but it's just important. I don't think the state does enough, you know, marketing to let individuals know about these other options. A lot of times we think that adults only have this GED option, but in 2016, it was under the Kasich administration where these new diploma pathways were implemented for adults. And you can get all the details on the ODE website about each one of these, but just important to know that in Ohio, the reason we don't use just the term GED, because, you know, that is just one of actually 3 national vendors now that have a national high school equivalency test. Ohio uses the GED, and we use this one called the HiSET. So I would say most, probably 90% of the test centers in Ohio are still administering the GED. But just know, no matter which of these tests the students take, they get the same issued Ohio High School Equivalence Diploma from ODE. So this is all just kind of an awareness piece for you if you ever hear of these. And then we have that ODE has the Adult 22 Plus High School Diploma Program, and that is really excellent for those adults that, you know, maybe dropped out and only needed, you know, 2 or 3 high school credits that they didn't complete. And there's no reason to make them have to sit through a, you know, a GED or HiSET test in equivalence when they can just do the credit recovery program now and make up those credits. And so those are offered through, the diploma is received through the local school district where the student lives. And then the adult diploma program is the one that probably gets the most recognition. Hopefully you've heard about that. That is where the individuals earn an industry recognized credential. At the same time, if they pass the work keys with an academic test, reading and math test, that combination of passing the work keys test, completing the industry recognized credential program, and then passing the credential test equals a high school diploma in Ohio. So it's just, you know, for your awareness to know about these different diploma options so that you can pass that along, because, you know, it's just interesting that adults, you know, if they know about these options, they kind of will pick which one is in their best interest. So back to Aspire services. Again, you know about the high school equivalency prep, the ESL programs, but, you know, we do have these workplace education partnerships. And so this is just another piece I want you to be aware of. These are the ones that are currently going on this year. So not all of our Aspire programs, we have 52 physical agents around the state. So as you can see, you know, there's only this many that are offering workplace programs, but this is an actual partnership with the employer where, you know, the employer determines what the needs are of the employees. These are not just open to the public. They're usually offered at the employer site. And for example, an ESL program, it's not just, okay, I need to learn English just to learn English. No, maybe the English language learners, you know, the goal of this ESL program is to learn how to read the employee handbook manual, for example. And so these programs are all driven by the needs of the employer. So the other piece I wanted to talk about, and I'll tell you what, this is where I'm probably going to spend the most time. So do you have any questions up to this point? And if not, I'm just going to go ahead and move on, and we can take some then at the end. Okay, if there's nothing in the chat.
I think there's one in the chat, and the question is it true that the age requirement has been reduced from 22 to 20? I'm thinking that has to do with the
adult diploma program.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, we had just heard that too. And so I contacted ODE, and I'm sorry, I believe it starts November 1st. I mean, don't quote me on that, but you're right. It has been
October 1st.
October 1st. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, So these integrated education and training programs, these are fairly new to Aspire. I mean, these are in the, we owe a 2014. So, okay, we're in 2021 now, but it did take a while for adult education to kind of get on board with these occupational training programs, because this was pretty much out of our, our scope previously. But I'll tell you, these programs are wonderful because, what better way to want to learn, improve your English or to learn academic skills to even pass improving your math and reading, writing skills than doing it in the context of, a job or an occupation that you're interested in. So we are catching up to this. We now have 40 different IET training programs going on around the state. I just listed, some of them here. And 28 of our 52 providers are offering IETs. So, a couple years ago, only 8 of our providers were offering IETs. So they are catching on. I'm hoping in a couple years, it's going to be 100% then of our providers will be offering these integrated education and training programs. So I will show you these in a little bit more detail. And most of them, as you'll see, are with the ESL students. These IETs are in our ESL programs because these are very, very similar to the adult diploma program, but these individuals are not receiving a high school diploma. So, for example, these English language learners, may already have a high school diploma, but this is a way for them to get another credential while they're learning English. So this cardiographic technician, the 10 students were in the first cohort in the spring, and this is in Cleveland, the Polaris Career Center. All 10 of the students, completed the course and passed the credentialing exam, and 3 of the students then were employed within the first month as EKG technicians from completing the training. And I don't have follow-up on all these students. That was just anecdotally what the director told me. So I wanted to share that with you. And this is being offered again this year at Polaris Career Center. Here's one offered at Tri-C. This powered industrial truck training happened to be all women in the class last time. And again, with these, it's not just the occupational training piece. The basic skills part has to be contextualized to the training. So they would be learning vocabulary, math, English, writing, all around these job skills. Tri-C also offers an CNA course. This is the same coursework as the one that the college offers. And this one then is free to students. This one is an example of kind of a career pathway. So the Miami Valley Career Technical Center in Dayton, they have the basics, ServSafe food handler certification. And so this class right here are the, the students that are new to learning English. And then once they complete this course, the next option is that they can go into the ServSafe Manager program, also offered right there at the Miami Valley CTC Aspire program. And so this one, I mean, they just have a really great partnership in the community with the Life Enrichment Center there in Dayton. And so the center provides, this beautiful kitchen, the food and the classroom space, and then the students, learning on the job training, they are producing these hot meals then that the organizations provide to the community. The customer service certification, that one is pretty popular here in Warren County. These students, they have a partnership with a Toyota dealership there in Warren County. And when these individuals complete the National Retail Federation customer service test and get their certification, they're pretty much guaranteed hired then at this Toyota dealership. And certainly, with these English language learners, there is the benefit to the employer to have bilingual employees. So I'm sorry, I'm going to just, so that's, that's the IET programs. They're going on all over the state. And, if you want to talk more about that, we can. Just got a few more slides for you. Rebecca said, hey, why don't you talk about maybe some best practices, with the Spire and the one-stops. And so I put it out to our local directors, Spire directors. Hey, tell me about, what makes a great partnership with your local one-stop. And these are the comments I got back. So for those of you that are, I would assume most of you would be affiliated with your OMJ centers, but this is the feedback that I got back. And I'm going to give you a minute just to read through that because it's a two-way street. We have to be providing, we Aspire have to provide, quality services, have a good teacher on board. The one-stop is not going to want to refer students to our programs if we don't have good teachers there. So, that's on us to provide that. But it's really nice that the one-stops, I mean, they've been, a lot of them go above and beyond and provide, the computers and great classroom space and things for the program. But it's also, this is probably, the Aspire being more than a GED program. That, I would really like for all of you workforce folks to kind of figure, now that you know about these IETs that we offer, how can Aspire be, a bigger part of kind of the career pathways in your local community. And then I really liked this quote here at the end from one of the administrators, right? What makes the partnership work well? Strong communication, passion for helping others, shared values, and the drive to provide quality services to those in need. I think that just kind of summed it up perfectly on both ends. And so all of this work is being done. Again, there are 52 fiscal agents. We do a competitive grant every 3 years. We just had the competition. So July 1 started our new 3-year funding cycle. And these are, this is the breakdown here of the programs. One OMJ center, that's the Athens, Ohio Means Job Center, is new. They're not new to Aspire. They've been a partner for a long time, but they are new as a fiscal agent. And another university came on board. So we have the University of Cincinnati now and Ohio University, both have Aspire grants. And, we had to do that pivot. A lot of the, our students like in-person classes. The majority like in-person classes just because of all the support, the wraparound services that can be provided. So certainly with COVID and last year, we took a big hit from serving like typically about 28, not serving, but actually enrolling 28,000 students annually. to last year, we had about 17,000 when we had to go to all virtual classes. Certainly our students, the whole not having computers and internet, that really impacted our students. So now it's nice to see that, the silver lining with COVID was that we were moving this way anyhow into offering virtual classes because, our students often have these barriers to getting to class and barriers to employment. So childcare, transportation issues, virtual classes, have been a godsend for a lot of students. And those are now going to continue as just a natural part of our programming. And I think that got accelerated because of COVID. But it's nice to see the in-person classes are opening up again, because I would say the majority of our students do like those in-person classes. Just know that digital literacy is offered in every sense of every classroom of Aspire programming. It's not a separate, let's learn Word, let's learn Excel, unless it's in one of those IT programs. But those skills are taught and integrated into the reading, writing, and math that is taught. So just know that digital literacy is just a natural literacy now, in all Aspire programs. So I think that is it. That is. And, there's my contact information. Reach out at any time. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, I'm open to anything.
Thank you. Well, I'm hoping we've got some questions. We've got some good time for discussion. One that came up in the chat, Donna, was about the IET programs and how do you go about getting one initiated, developed? I would add on really the funding. How do you make sure that you've got adequate funding? And I would love for you to speak to that.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really important piece, because you're right. With that occupational training, that did, I think some of the reason why some of our programs are hesitant is because they're afraid, well, that occupational training piece is going to eat into my regular services of, my HSC prep classes and my literacy classes. And but we have tried to provide supplemental funds for individuals that want to start IET programs. I mean, they're within reason. We don't have a big budget for occupational training. I don't believe any of our programs are receiving they're not on the eligible training provider list to receive Title I funds to pay for the occupational training piece. But the way they're doing it is, for example, in the ServSafe trainings, the Aspire teacher goes through the training and becomes the trainer, or else we do a purchase service contract for a teacher to teach the occupational training piece along with the Aspire teacher who's teaching the basic skills piece. So that's how we make it work. And I mean, if you have something specific, like I think if you would reach out to your local Aspire program and talk about, a need for an IET in your community, I think they would love to, feel a part of the workforce community. And a lot of them already are, though.
So thank you. And I just took your screen off share. We will circulate it just so we can see people's faces if they have questions and want to turn the camera on. Yeah. So as a follow-up to that, I know when we were preparing for this session, one of the things that's top of mind for me is how to better utilize the WIOA system to be able to support adult education, even when someone's hired without a high school diploma or degree or GED. their ability to advance is constrained by not having that. And so as we think about all of this work that's going into training people to get back to work, what are the opportunities to really make sure that adult basic education is a part of that?
I think, like we heard from on the slide, it's just the Aspire, the programs want to be kind of at the table of these discussions. So like the grants for industry partnerships. I mean, I guess I would love for Aspire to be a part of those discussions, because there's a starting point for every career pathway. And often in discussions, it's like people think the pathway has to start here, and actually Aspire is the first rung often of that pathway in those IT models that I showed you. So I think just inviting people to the table to have those discussions would be a huge step.
That's great. And it reminds me that access to those conversations and doing this sort of networking and sharing information is one of the values I think the coalition brings. So if anyone's on this call and is interested in connecting or better connecting, certainly reach out to Donna, reach out to me, and we can see what we can do to connect some dots. So Lori has a question. Do you think that funding for family literacy will be available again? And how can we best advocate for these dollars?
Yeah, I know we kind of talked about this, but I'll tell you, the blessing and the curse of WIOA is that family literacy, here the legislation is called Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, right? So, right, the weight that holds. And we in adult education know the power of educating the parents and how that impacts the children. But the actual funding for the federal definition of family literacy programs, most states, including Ohio, have not supported the family literacy portion of it, because unfortunately, our federal outcomes for funding are based on high school credentials and getting people to post-secondary. Our federal funding does not require us to help individuals in a family literacy program. So
it's a tough one.
It is, sure. Because we certainly, we do family literacy in our programs. We talk to parents about the importance of, reading good books with their children. It's just a natural part of adult education. But I think Lori's talking about the family literacy funding piece, by the federal definition, the Parents and Children Together program and all that. And I think only two that I know of are going on around the state right now. And so I just, as long as we're under WIOA, I guess, and the focus being on employment, it's just don't see it in the near future, to be very transparent.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your forthrightness. One of the things that is, I guess, another point about outcomes and what the ultimate goals of the programming is, we also talked about when we were preparing, and that's this idea that there's some competition between basic education and an employment pathway, and that somehow if you pursue employment, you're going to drop out of your GED classes, or if you're in your GED classes, you can't work. And so that's on, there's individual instructors who are trying to move people along either pathway. And how can we make sure that people don't have to pick between their GED or a paycheck?
Yeah, and I was surprised, Rebecca, when you shared that with me, because we're all about, you're right, people needing to, I guess I never thought of it as an either or. It's, adults, right? We all work and we all still go to school. And so I think the expectation is still, adult students, they work, they go to school. So it's definitely not an either or kind of situation. And I mean, if there's something I need to do on my end, if you feel that if that's the way our programs are kind of being seen as, teachers saying, well, you can only, work on your high school diploma, or you can only work. I mean, that kind of goes against the grain of working with adults who have, families and jobs and, all those life things that we have to multitask and do at the same time. It's no different for our students. So,
So there's actually a question, but then some comments. And you all, if you want to turn your cameras on and your mics on and jump in, please do. We've got more time than usual. But so there's a comment that in Hocking County, and maybe this is a response to my last question, they'll enroll GED students into subsidized employment through WIOA or CCMEP TANF to build their GED classes into the work week. Kathleen, if you're comfortable, I would love for you to say just a bit more about that, because I think that's great, and would love to make sure share how you got that going and how it's working. And she's probably like, you're putting me on the spot.
Sure, I'm fine doing that. So we don't have a ton of GED students in Hocking County, so it may not be something that can be brought up to scale in the larger counties, but we've had a few of our, usually they're our older participants in the WIOA program because they're not in high school anymore, but they've mentioned that many of them have tried to do GED before and have had to quit because they have too many things going on in their life. Mm-hmm. So we'll put them in our subsidized employment program, which I'm assuming many people on this call are familiar with that program. It's a paid work experience that we can offer through CCMEP, and they become HAPCAP employees, but they get placed in the community as volunteers. And we try to find sites that are interesting or relevant to them. But we also try to find sites that are flexible and would allow them to sit at a computer for 2 hours, 3 days a week or something, and meet with their GED instructor virtually or work on some of the classwork. So we've done it with, I think, 2 or 3 people so far, and one of them still ended up dropping out, but it really seems to, we see relief in the participants' faces when they know they can still bring in an income and continue to work towards their goals. Because even though, like everyone's, like it was mentioned, they shouldn't be in competition. I do think people see it sometimes as an either or. And GED is often, if they're employed, GED is often one of the first responsibilities to go, just because they need to bring in that money and they need to care for their kids. They can't drop those roles. So it's nothing super fancy. We just, I think the real benefit is that the schedule is really flexible since they're just volunteers at the sites. The employer doesn't absolutely need them there. I think that's the main difference.
Yeah.
It's a great strategy, and I'd love to know if others around the state who are on the call are doing that or have other, sort of workarounds or strategies that you've deployed. And we do have a few more questions. Does anyone else want to jump in?
And I do appreciate, so that actually really helped me understand, because I may have misunderstood. I thought that, Rebecca, you were saying that the teachers, were kind of implying to the students, you have, employment or, education. And that's a part that wasn't jiving with me, but the students coming in with those perceptions, absolutely. It's a lot, right? It's a lot. Kids, work, home. And when you have all these other barriers, absolutely, students do choose one over the other. Yeah, but I thought you meant the teachers were doing that. And I was like, no.
Well, so yes, I think it's more concerned about the students having to juggle that. And I have had experience with instructors, not necessarily making folks pick, but being hesitant to get them into workforce programming because they have to juggle more then. And so I think it's just, as we're all looking at specific outcomes and the way they're measured and, how do you get credit for what you're doing? It's a system issue. I don't think it's an instructor issue. Right. It's a bigger system.
Yeah.
system question. So let me make sure I get back to the questions in the chat. So there was a question about tutors and funding for training tutors and teachers in the OG or Wilson systems for adults with very low literacy levels. So that sounds like professional development funding. Holly, is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Thank you. So is that available, Donna?
Hi, Holly. So sure. I mean, we have $1 million in our budget that we actually spend on professional development annually for Aspire practitioners. Our professional development is done through Kent State University, with state trainers and national. We are involved in a lot of national trainings, but I mean, I think Holly's asking for something really specific, like in the Wilson reading program. I think if the local program wanted to use some of their funding, they always set aside PD money. And if they found that they had a need or wanted their teachers to take the Wilson training program, for example, then they could use their budget to do that. So not on a statewide level, but at the local level.
That's what I was hoping to do, is do it on a statewide level, because I work with the LDA of Ohio now.
Right.
And we have trainers who can do that, as webinars, and you don't have to be in front necessarily of the people when you're being trained. So it's we put together a program that could be used for the whole state, and that way everybody gets the same training, and it's done through a webinar, and it's done by trainers that do this every day. Just because I know the low level readers, it's just that they need that specific training, or it's just not, you can't just go in and tutor somebody who's having issues with low. If they're 30 and they're still in the second, third grade level, they're going to need more specialized training.
And that's why Ohio has been involved for a couple of years in the national training. It's called STAR. It stands for Student Achievement in Reading, done by national trainers through US Ed. And we're starting a new cohort of our teachers actually next month. So we're, reading, and that is geared for the lower level students. So I understand, Holly, where you're coming from, but yes, reading and understanding learning disabilities is certainly a big part of the professional development that we provide, because it's a big part of our students' lives.
Yeah, it would be great to know too that they're trained in that, so that because we get requests through our websites and our, through LDA, and we don't know where to send them. So we don't want to send them to just any program, because again, if you're not sure how to truly train somebody with dyslexia and help them to read, then it's going to be a waste of their time. So it's good to know if you guys are really going through that and learning the OG, which is really the motherboard of it. And I don't know if STARS is an offshoot of OG or not. But, we're looking to partner with organizations that we know we can send these people to, and know that they're going to get quality tutoring,
Yeah, it's not Orton Gillingham, but it's a national training. So no, I can't say that we are following your, the ones that you're advocating for.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So there's another comment in the chat that I think is particularly relevant right now. And this is Kristen talking about in Summit County, the changes they saw with going to virtual and evening classes, and how that helped students be able to be more successful with their educational goals. So I'd love to hear thoughts? I mean, we're kind of going back to our new normal, if you will. What's the future of virtual ABE in Ohio?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm that's the silver lining from the pandemic, is that virtual classes are here to stay. Our students, a lot of them, that's not a lot, but some, that is their preferred learning style. And then the convenience factor of the virtual classes. So they're here to stay.
Got it. Okay, let me again make sure we don't have any other questions. Does anyone want to jump in, share what you're working on locally, or comment on something we've talked about? I could go on forever, but you don't want to hear me talk.
Hey, Rebecca, somebody asked me about how they can learn more information about the STARS program. And I didn't know, Donna, if there's a place you can, if there's a nice summary somewhere that people can learn more about it.
I mean, not off the top of my head. It's just the US Ed STAR STAR reading program. I wonder if that would, a search of that would get you to where you want to be.
Thank you. Well, I will wrap up with just one final question. So the Ohio Workforce Coalition is active in looking at what public policies we can either advocate for, or what maybe administrative rules we want to see changed. And, you know, Lori mentioned the family literacy work, and that's certainly a public policy and how it's funded. But are there things that stick out to you that from Ohio, from a policy perspective, that you'd like to have the coalition think about, or that we should be paying particular attention to? I mean, you mentioned the sector partnerships. I think I'd love to see more integration there across the board, but anything else that jumps out to you from a public policy perspective?
You know, and maybe just if anybody on here can, the eligible training provider list, is that, so now that you know kind of about our IETs, you know, should our Aspire programs be putting our training programs into that eligible training provider list? Right now, we're just using it out of our instructional grant to pay for the occupational training, but I'm wondering if we can grow these more. You know, maybe that's more discussion with the Office of Workforce Development, JFS.
Mm-hmm.
But if any of you have some insight into that, I'd appreciate that. That part is not my area of expertise for sure.
I'm happy to respond to that, but would love to have someone from our audience respond to it. All right, hearing no one. So I think it's incredibly important to connect those dots. Adding the ABE providers to the list, I'm not sure that that's the most efficient way to do it, but I do think, and I'm putting in the chat right now, that, you know, the use of the WIOA funds specifically allow the integration of adult education programming or remediation. And so if there's a way to sort of connect the dots on that side, then they wouldn't necessarily need to be on the eligible training provider list, because they would be embedded in programs that were. And so I know we've got a couple of community college friends on the phone. I'd love to hear if that's something that as you see students who are getting ITAs, is there an opportunity to better integrate the adult education components so that we have an integrated education and training model?
So Rebecca, this is Lori. This is something I've been advocating for forever. And I really believe that there needs to be more education with the Office of Workforce Transformation on what is being done in these IETs, because they do come out with a credential. I think that the key thing is that an adult education program in and of itself can't be on the approved training provider list, but if they're connected with the organization that is doing the actual occupational skill certification, then I think it's a combined program that gets added to that provider's list. Tri-C has done that with a couple of their programs. I'm not positive on the adult education side, but I know they've done some partner programs where they've just added it as a separate program. I think it's a natural to do that because it's coming out with a credential. And I think that's something that, you know, if we can do at the Ohio Workforce Coalition, get a conversation started about that. I really do believe there is something to that. What's the benefit of that? Obviously, it's to get some of the WIOA funding under Title I to pay for the certification part of it, so that Title II can focus on what's needed to get the literacy and numeracy skills up to par.
Yeah, and I would add that this is particularly important right now as all of this money's coming down, because it's going to follow, in a lot of cases, the WIOA policy guidance. And so I do think there's an opportunity. If anyone's interested in having more conversation about that, would love for you to reach out and we can talk more. Yeah, that's a great policy question. How do we figure that out? Wonderful.
I just have one comment. Sorry.
Sure.
I'm not an expert by any description of the word, but there could be possible ways to use WIOA funding even if it's not an eligible provider, as long as it's lining up with one of the services that WIOA can provide. So, for example, we had a high school student that attended a summer camp at Hocking College, and it's not exactly the same as what we're talking about here, but it aligned with some of the WIOA services, so we could pay for it. It just didn't end in a credential, so it didn't play into the WIOA performance measures. So I think the policy side question is still good, because it would be nice to get credit for the credentials that people earn. But if the matter is just, can we fund it to help this participant go through the program, it is possible, depending on how the area and the county interprets the WIOA rules and what their policies are, that maybe some funding could go towards it still.
Thanks, Kathleen. That's encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that gets through all of our questions for Donna. If there are any, speak now or reach out to her directly via email. I'm appreciative of your time and being here and fielding some difficult questions. I know I probably put you on the spot, but I think it's those sort of discussions that can help us move forward. So thank you for being willing to talk about it.
Yeah,
and
appreciate it.
Not a problem. So as I mentioned at the outset, this webinar will be posted online at the Ohio Workforce Coalition's website, which is just ohioworkforcecoalition.org. We'll also link to it if you prefer looking at Twitter. You can find it at Ohio WC on Twitter. Please join us next month. We're working on topics for the October 28th session. If you've got ideas for future sessions, please feel free to reach out to me. And again, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Donna, and we will see you in October.